morning, everybody. We had a little break from new chapters yesterday as we did our little paragraph, but we're going to get back into Farmer Boy today with chapter 15, The Cold Snap is the name of this chapter. So as I've been doing for the, I guess maybe just last video on Monday, I have my document camera here, and I'm going to have you follow along as we hear about the cold snap. Remember that it is kind of mirroring the weather that we're having right now for the wilders. So they had winter, and then it warmed up and it's springtime, kind of like here, but it's actually predicted that it's going to really drop to freezing temperatures again. You're going to be watching this on Wednesday, so it'll be tomorrow, Thursday, that it's supposed to really drop. So keep that in mind with this chapter because it's going to really relate to what the wilders are going through. It affects the crops when it warms up and then it suddenly becomes cold again. So let's begin reading chapter 15, Cold Snap. I'll move my things over here. Okay. That was a cold, late spring. The dawns were chilly, and at noon the sunlight was cool. The trees unfolded their leaves slowly. The peas and beans, the carrots and corn, stood waiting for warmth and did not grow. When the rush of spring's work was over, Almanzo had to go to school again. Only small children went to the spring term of school, and he wished he were old enough to stay home. Why do you think the older kids stay home? To help out with the farm work. He didn't like to sit and study a book when there were so many interesting things to do. Father hauled the fleeces, that means the ones from the last chapter, to the carding machine in Malone. A carding machine gets out all of the knots and everything, and brought home the soft, long rolls of wool combed out straight and fine. Mother didn't card her own wool anymore since there was a machine that did it on shares, but she dyed it. So there was a machine that they did on shares. That means it's shared between a bunch of different people. So you basically save a lot of time and money by sharing this machine and everybody gets to use it. But she dyed it on her own. Now Alice and Eliza Jane were gathering roots and barks in the woods, and Royal was building huge bonfires in the yard. They boiled the roots and the bark in big cauldrons over the fires, and they dipped the long skeins of wool thread that Mother had spun and lifted them out on sticks all colored brown and red and blue. Sorry, I keep looking down here and forgetting to lift it up. Now, when Almanzo went home from school, the clotheslines were hanging full of colored skeins. So let me go back a page. You can see what that dyeing process looks like. So they're putting the wool, or skeins, I guess it's pronounced. I had to look that up. So these are skeins of wool that are going to end up being kind of bundles of yarn so that Mother can actually weave things with them. So full of colored skeins. Now Mother was making soft soap too. All the winter's ashes had been saved in a barrel. Now water was poured over them, and lye was dripping out of a little hole in the bottom of the barrel. Mother measured the lye into a cauldron and added pork rinds and all the waste pork fat and beef fat that she had been saving all winter. The cauldron boiled, and the lye and the fat made soap. So that's another use for this cauldron. So they're using all of the fat from different animals that they've had for meat, and they're also using lye from ashes. So the combination of those ashes plus the animal fat make basically a candle wax, but they have to boil it down to become that candle wax. Now Almanzo could have kept the bonfires burning. He could have dipped the brown, slimy soap out of the cauldron and filled the tubs with it, but he had to go back to school. So making soap sounds a lot more fun to him. He watched the moon anxiously, for in the dark of the moon in May, he could stay out of school and plant pumpkins. He keeps looking for chances to just stay home. He loves the farm work. Then, in the chill, early morning, he tied a pouch full of pumpkin seeds around his waist and went to the cornfield. All the dark field had a thin green veil of weeds over it now. The small blades of corn were not growing well because of the cold. At every second hill of corn, in every second row, Almanzo knelt down and took a thin, flat pumpkin seed between his thumb and finger. How many of you have seen pumpkin seeds before? They actually even have them as a snack, kind of like a sunflower seed. So pumpkin seeds are thin and flat. He's actually planting new pumpkins with those seeds. He pushed the seed sharp point down into the ground. It was chill work at first, but pretty soon the sun was higher. The air and the earth smelled good, and it was fun to poke his finger and thumb into the soft soil and leave the seed there to grow. Day after day he worked, till all the pumpkins were planted, and then he begged to hoe and thin the carrots. He hoed all the weeds away from the long rows, and he pulled the little feathery carrot tops, till those that were left stood 2 inches apart. So it's very precise work. He didn't hurry at all. No one had ever taken such pains with carrots as he did, because he didn't want to go back to school. Oh, that's why he's being careful. He wants to go slow and steady so he doesn't have to go back. He made the work last till there were only 3 more days of school. Then the spring term ended anyway, and he could work all summer. First, he helped hoe the cornfield. Father plowed between the rows, and Royal and Almanzo with hoes killed every weed that was left. Remember that he's like a little soldier fighting off those weeds. And he hoed around each hill of corn. Slash, slash went the hoes all day, stirring the earth around the young shoots of corn and the first 2 flat leaves of the pumpkins. Hoeing is, a hoe is kind of like a shovel, but it's for like basically softening up the dirt and moving it around. Now 2 acres of corn Almanzo hoed, and then he hoed 2 acres of potatoes. That finished the hoeing for a while. And now it was strawberry time. Wild strawberries were few that year and late because frost had killed the first blossoms. Almanzo had to go far through the woods to fill his pail full of small, sweet, fragrant berries. When he found them clustered under their green leaves, he couldn't help but eat some. He snipped off the green twigs of wintergreen and ate them too. And he nibbled with his teeth the sweet, sour wood sorrel stems, right up to their frail lavender blossoms. He stopped to shy stones at the frisking squirrels, and he left his pail on the banks of streams and went wading, chasing the minnows. But he never came home till his pail was full. Then there were strawberries and cream for supper. Do any of you ever have that for dessert? Yum. And next day, Mother would make strawberry preserves, like jam. I never saw corn grow so slowly, Father worried. He plowed the field again, and again Almanzo helped Royal to hoe the corn. But the little shoots stood still, meaning it's not growing, that corn. On the 1st of July, we're all the way in July, they were only 4 inches high. They seemed to feel that danger threatened them and to be afraid to grow. You think the corn's afraid to grow? It was just 3 days to Independence Day, the 4th day of July. Then it was 2 days, then it was 1 day, and that night Almanzo had to take a bath, though it wasn't Saturday. Next morning, they were all going to the celebration in Malone. That's the town where they go to church. So they're going to a big Independence Day celebration. Almanzo could hardly wait till morning. There would be a band and speeches, and the brass cannon would be fired. The air was still and cold that night, and the stars had a wintry look. After supper, Father went to the barns again. He shut the doors and little wooden windows of the horses' stalls, and he put the ewes with lambs into the folds. When he came in, Mother asked if it was any warmer. Father shook his head. I do believe it is going to freeze, he said. Surely not, Mother replied. That's an example of onomatopoeia we're going to talk about on Friday. It's a written word that sounds like a sound, like psh, cha, kind of the way she sounds. Mainly, it's kind of like waving it off like it's not a problem. But she actually looked worried. Now, sometime in the night, Almanzo felt cold, but he was too sleepy to do anything about it. Then he heard Mother calling, "Royal, Almanzo!" He was too sleepy to open his eyes. "Boys, get up, hurry," Mother called. "The corn's frozen." "Oh my goodness, it's July and it froze over?" So he tumbled out of bed and pulled on his trousers. He couldn't keep his eyes open. His hands were clumsy, and big yawns almost dislocated his jaw. He staggered downstairs behind Royal. Do any of you ever get up and you feel like you're walking, but you're still asleep? That's Almanzo right now. Now, Mother and Eliza Jane and Alice were putting on their hoods and shawls. The kitchen was cold. The fire had not been lighted. Outdoors, everything looked strange. The grass was white with frost and a cold green streak was in the eastern sky, but the air was dark. So Father hitched Bess and Beauty to the wagon. Royal pumped the watering trough full. Almanzo helped Mother and the girls bring tubs and pails, and Father set barrels in the wagon. They filled the tubs and barrels full of water, and then they walked behind the wagon to the cornfield. All the corn was frozen. The little leaves were stiff and broke if you touched them. Only cold water would save the life of the corn. Every hill must be watered before the sunshine touched it, or the little plants would die. There would be no corn crop that year. The wagon stopped at the edge of the field. And let's stop and think of this for a second. If they don't have corn, can you think of how that affects them? Well, remember that they eat all the food that they grow, but they also sell it. Like they made a lot of money off the potatoes. That's their living. So if it freezes, this corn cannot be sold. They've got a whole field of corn. Who knows how big the field is? And so they won't be able to sell it, and that might make it very difficult for them to have all of their normal things that they buy. So every hill must be watered before the sunshine touched it, it said, or the little plants would die. Now the wagon stopped at the edge of the field. Father and Mother and Royal and Eliza Jane and Alice and Almanzo, all of them, filled their pails with water, and they all went to work as fast as they could. Almanzo tried to hurry, but the pail was heavy and his legs were short. His wet fingers were cold. The water slopped against his legs, and he was terribly sleepy. He stumbled along the rows, and at every hill of corn, he poured a little water over the frozen leaves. The field seemed enormous. There were thousands and thousands of hills of corn. Almanzo began to be hungry, but he couldn't stop to complain. He must hurry, hurry, hurry to save the corn. Oh, that's so sweet. Almanzo cares so much about his family. All of the Wilders are working together because they know how important this is. Now the green in the east turned pink. Every moment the light brightened. At first the dark had been like a mist over the endless field. Now Almanzo could see to the end of the long rows. He tried to work faster. He's almost at the end. He can see the end. And the light is brightening because the sun is coming up. Now, in an instant, the earth turned from black to gray. The sun was coming to kill the corn. Almanzo ran to fill his pail. He ran back. He ran down the rows, splashing water on the hills of corn. His shoulders ached and his arm ached, and there was a pain in his side. The soft earth hung on to his feet. He was terribly hungry, but every splash of water saved a hill of corn. Oh, what perseverance! Right? He is falling asleep almost. He's so hungry. His shoulders ache. His arms ached. He's so tired. However, he knows how important every one of these pieces of corn is, and so he is continuing to work as long as possible. In the gray light, the corn had faint shadows now. All at once, pale sunshine came over the field. "Keep on," Father shouted. So they all kept on. They didn't stop. But in a little while, Father gave up. "No use," he called. Nothing would save the corn after the sunshine touched it. And he's talking about just the rest of the corn that they didn't get to. That part is not going to be saved. But all of the stuff that they did get water on is going to be fine. Now Almanzo set down his pail and straightened up against the ache in his back. All the others stood and looked too and did not say anything. They had watered almost 3 acres. Oh my goodness. A quarter of an acre had not been watered. It was lost. So only 1/4 of an acre was left. Almanzo trudged back to the wagon and climbed in. Father said, "Let's be thankful we saved most of it." So they rode sleepily down to the barns. Almanzo was not quite awake yet, and he was tired and cold and hungry. His hands were clumsy doing the chores. But most of the corn was saved. What an amazing example of perseverance for that entire family, working together, not stopping until they saved every part of the corn that they could. It also shows great excellence, right? Almanzo is striving for excellence in all of the things that he does, and he's not going to give up. He's going to make sure every little piece is watered. Even though he was the youngest in the family, he never gave up. So that is the end of that chapter. Thankfully, they did save most of it. And this shows why they actually are pretty wealthy. They make good money because they are such hard workers. The whole family comes in together for this. Okay, that is all for today. I hope you enjoy. There's a few questions to answer about the chapter, and I will talk to you later. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.